Share via email. Report story. Chapter 3. Blinding white stabbed his vision. He took off his glasses and rubbed at his eyes before putting them back on and squinting through the light. He heard himself gasp, and it was enough to assure him he hadn't gone deaf. What? His voice echoed. Where is this? Iida. He knew that voice. Turning, he saw Ochako run over to him worriedly. She was in her UA school uniform, and, looking down at himself, so was he. Where are we? He asked, looking around. There were no walls or ceiling, just empty whiteness that went on and on. We did it. Ochako breathed out. She was stunned the trick had actually worked, which meant it really was a weakness in the quirk. If the quirk had a weakness from within, then there had to be a way to disable it from the inside. Determination bubbled in her chest and she balled her hands into fists. We made it. We made it in. Like leaking watercolors, clouds of green and brown slowly painted the ground beneath their feet. Ochako quieted and nervously stepped closer to her friend for security. The white room transformed into a walkway. They heard the sound of traffic far away and to their right was a chain-link fence that separated them from a few teens playing baseball. Iida froze in shock when a body passed through him. He remembered how Ochako had described being unable to touch anyone in here. It was creepy, feeling only the heat of someone else's body walk through him. The person who had passed them had familiar green hair and a yellow backpack. That's Deku. Ochako yelled before Iida could. They both ran after the boy. Midoriya, please wait. He knew it was useless, but he was just so used to talking with the shorter boy. Midoriya had always been respectable and kind, and Iida was grateful to have him as his friend. Something was slightly different with this Midoriya. Sure, this was probably a few years ago, so he should have expected physical differences, but the way he walked, the way he held himself. As Iida and Ochako followed him, he noticed how Izuku always seemed to keep his eyes down. His steps were also slightly on the lazy side, indicating the boy had little or no motivation at the moment. What do we do? Ochako asked hesitantly, worry seeping into her voice. We got in but, now what? Iida cupped his chin, thinking things over. Midoriya's doctor said it's a weakness in the quirk. We can cancel a quirk if we can find the weakness, he said, but then his face pinched as he continued thinking out loud. However, it doesn't seem like there is much we can do. We are unable to touch or speak to him. Does that mean all of this is only a part of the weakness? He asked himself, looking around. He didn't recognize the area, but there was nothing suspicious about it. There had to be a clue. There was a loud clap and Izuku stopped to look at the group of friends playing baseball. Oh, run, you doofus. Start running, man. Oh, air, right. Those sitting on the benches cheered and laughed. One girl waved her cap in the air. Ochako and Iida saw the small smile on Izuku's face. Iida didn't miss the longing in those green eyes. Iida looked back at the group behind the fence. Did he know some of them? Did he want to join them? He noticed how Ochako looked at Izuku. Her hand was about to touch his shoulder but then dropped her hand when she remembered she couldn't do anything in this state. Promoted stories. You'll also like The Hero Who Sings with a Smile 38.7K 364 high. Guys, this is my first story I write on Wattpad. I hope you like it. The Hero's Return MHAXJJK ongoing 114K 1.7K and quad. Izuku. Midoriya, after being betrayed and killed, vanishes leaving hurt people behind. After 2 months in a hack, he come back, changed. How will the class re? After all, Omfluke 11.4K802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings, Eng. Siro Deku Onishots 31.4K798. Because of circumstances, this book won't be continued unfortunately. Feel free to check out my other stuff. Thank you for understanding. Mirko X Shy Male Reader 168K 1.1 Key. Don't own MHA. I hope you enjoy the story I made. Her prince from the underworld path demon is 0.25.7K 450. It's basically the same story as my succubus Momo X Deku story. I know, real original, but hey, now you guys get a Deku from the other side of the tracks. The Kings and Queen Yandere Wakfu X Reader 56.8K 1.8 Kyonder. Wakfu X Reader. Images do not belong to me unless stated. Wakfu does not belong to me, it belongs to Enigma. This is being rewritten in another book on my profile. Uraraka. Iida asked carefully. Was he missing something that she somehow caught? She clutched at her heart and looked down. Their friend adjusted his backpack with a shrug of his shoulders and continued walking. He looks lonely, she admitted sadly. He half understood what she meant. Sure, he was alone at the moment, but didn't he know those kids? And Midoriya was an easy person to make friends with, and while his mother had told them he hadn't had any friends, Iida figured Izuku must have knew a few people as acquaintances. I'm sure Midoriya's just tired right now, he told her, because his friend did indeed look worn out. They continued to tail him until they reached an apartment building. I'm home, Mom, Izuku called out, closing the door behind him and bending down to slip off his shoes. The door went through Iida and Ochako and they instinctively squinted. The door felt cold when going through them. It didn't make much sense. They stood on concrete and solid ground just fine, but couldn't touch the door. Welcome back, sweetie. There was a squeak as the tap water in the kitchen was turned off. Inko was in an apron, smiling lovingly at him as her son came over to her. He leaned his head on her and she gave him a kiss on the head. You must be tired. She grabbed a filled pot. Go rest. I'll call you when it's ready. Okay, Mom, her son said with a bright smile before heading for his room. The apartment was small, but decent, enough for Inko and her son. Iida and Ochako remembered how this chubby woman arrived at their dorms to celebrate her son's birthday. Judging from the photos in the home and how quiet the place was, they figured Inko only had Izuku. There was no sign of a father or any other kids around. Izuku was her only boy, her only family. They couldn't blame the woman for being so attached to her baby. He was everything to her. The photos on the walls were all of him, so he was her only son. He wasn't a difficult person, which meant he wasn't a difficult child to care for. Inko and Izuku were both caring people, and it was easy to see why these two were so attached to each other. The chubby woman placed steaming bowls and plates on the table. She messed about with the cutlery before going over to her son's room and calling him. He came out in regular gray clothes. He didn't look as lonely as before. His smile was genuine, and it was all thanks to his mother. Eat up, honey. She gave him a kiss on the cheek when he sat down. Thanks, Mom. While it was a relaxing atmosphere, Ochako and Iida felt out of place. They were basically intruding on their friends' memories. How was school today? Inko asked, sitting down as well to join in. It was fine. Nothing much happened, he told her happily, grabbing a bowl of rice. She didn't look convinced, but nodded and reached for a plate. They ate in silence for a while. It looked like Inko was waiting for him to finish most of his meal before asking her question. I hope Katsuki isn't still bothering you, dear, she brought up the subject. Bakugo. Iida whispered, forgetting that those two couldn't hear him or Ochako. Izuku lowered the rice bowl from his mouth and stared at her wide-eyed, a few grains of rice sticking just by his lips. No, no, Kachans. He's fine, Mom, really. He gave her a wide smile, but she saw right through him. She sighed sadly. Izuku, please. He reached over the table and gently grabbed her hand. I'm doing better, I promise. He tried to show her he was happy, but she knew her boy. As for Iida and Ochako, they only realized he was faking due to how his eyes were missing their regular spirit. Izuku, she whispered. It was hard for her to keep herself together when it came to this. You have a bruise, Izuku. He froze. His pupils shrunk and he searched himself to find any discoloration. Inko pushed herself from her chair and went over to him. Mom. She didn't let him finish. She gently grabbed his arm and her thumb brushed near a dark patch on his upper arm. The bruise was just visible from beneath the short sleeve. Izuku looked up at her with slight panic. It's nothing, I just fell, it doesn't even hurt. He tried, adding an awkwardly forced chuckle to lighten the mood. It didn't work. Iida and Ochako watched with pained hearts as Inko's eyes watered. Iida wanted to place a comforting hand on the mother's shoulder. He tried in vain, and his hand went through her shoulder. Izuku, please. Mom, don't cry. He panicked even more. It's okay, Mom. She grabbed his head and brought him to her chest, hugging him desperately. Mom, she sniffed. Do you need me to call his mother again? Katsuki might listen to her this time. No, Mom, it's okay. I don't want to get him in trouble with her again. Izuku, honey, she whispered gently, hugging him closer. Don't blame yourself, sweetie. Don't do this. Mom. He slowly hugged her back. Ochako wiped at her stinging eyes. Iida adjusted his glasses, the light reflecting on the lens and masking the sadness in his eyes. Inko was a lovable woman, and seeing her slowly breaking apart for her son was too much. If he's hurting you again, I have to know. You don't deserve to get hurt. Please, Izuku, tell me what happened. Everyone in class knew Midoriya and Bakugo had some sort of shared history. Bakugo was known for his bad temper, and because of the fact that they knew each other before UA, no one in class thought it was any of their business to interfere. They'd figured Bakugo's malicious attitude toward Izuku was partially due to their familiarity with each other. Ochako and Iida remembered the birthday party. Inko had been so kind to Bakugo, as if he hadn't tormented her son a few years ago. Had she been forcing herself to be kind to him, or had she forgiven him for Izuku's sake? Izuku gave her one firm squeeze before pulling away, keeping his hands in hers as he smiled at her sweetly. I just fell. I'll be fine, Mom, I promise. Izuku. It's fine, really. Don't worry about me. He gave her one of those childish smiles that always melted her heart. She gripped his hands tightly. If you need to talk, if you need to tell me anything, no matter what happens, I'm here for you, Izuku. Ochako couldn't hold in her tears. He wouldn't lean on his mother because he thought he was only worrying her further, and Inko probably felt her son didn't trust her enough to ask her for help. I know, Mom, he told her gently. The two cleaned the table and washed the dishes together before Inko insisted she'd finish the rest on her own. Izuku gave her a kiss and a final, "Love you, Mom," before leaving to his room. Iida and Ochako stood still as Inko rinsed another plate. Deku. Ochako whispered, her hand clutching at her heart. The mother-son exchange earlier had shredded her heart into tiny bits. The son was hurting, and so was his mother, and by trying to protect each other, they were only causing more damage. This isn't right, Iida finally said. He needs to talk to her. Leaving the matter like this will not solve this. But what could we do? Iida and Ochako asked that same question. When Inko finished her task by the sink, she grabbed her phone and slumped heavily on the sofa. The two teens peeked over her shoulder as the woman scrolled through her contacts list. Mitsuki Bakugo, the contact read. They recalled the conversation Inko had with her son. Call Bakugo's mother again, which meant Inko had complained to Bakugo's mother before. That also explained why she had the woman on her contact list. The rivalry between Izuku and Katsuki had affected their families as well. I knew Bakugo is hostile, but this. Iida didn't need to finish his sentence. Ochako merely watched in worry as the mothers talked on the phone. It seemed like these two were somewhat friends, if Mrs. Bakugo's joking manner was anything to go by. They talked normally, asking how the other was doing and such, until Bakugo's mother got straight to the chase. Katsuki's at it again, isn't he? Mitsuki's voice buzzed through the phone. Inko messed with the ends of her hair nervously. I found. Izuku has another bruise and. Mitsuki sighed exasperatedly over the phone. I swear, that boy is gonna give me gray hairs. It's like whatever I say goes in one ear and out the other. Inko nodded, even though she knew the person on the other end couldn't see her. I'm sorry, I hope this isn't too much trouble. No, no, I should be the one saying sorry. I'm really sorry about this, honey. I'll talk to that brat soon. Oh, don't be too hard on him, please. Inko pleaded. It's fine. That kid always sees himself at the top of the pyramid. Someone has to show him that's not how things work. Life isn't a fucking pyramid. Inko winced and held the phone away from her ear. Ochako and Iida's sweat dropped. Now they knew where Bakugo's foul mouth came from. Is this about Katsuki again? A man's voice asked. They assumed it had to be the husband nearby. Did he get into another fight? The little punk hit poor Izuku again. Mitsuki shouted. The father sighed from afar. Honey, are you still sure you don't want to sign him into therapy? It might help him. You and I both know how Katsuki reacted to that idea last time. Inko looked uncomfortable by how messy the situation was. Oh, sorry, the other woman laughed it off. I'll deal with Katsuki. You just make sure little Izuku's okay, honey. I will. Thank you. With that, Inko ended the call and threw her head back in exhaustion. Mrs. Midoriya, Iida whispered. He desperately wanted to comfort the woman. He knew she wouldn't be able to hear him, but still. Mrs. Midoriya, please, do not blame yourself. Ochako nodded frenetically. Deku loves you so much. He'll be sad, too, if he saw you sad. Yes, please. Don't worry, we will watch over him. It was hard to remember Izuku probably didn't even know them at this time. This was a few years ago, which meant he hadn't met either Ochako or him yet. Deku. Ochako couldn't shake off that feeling of dread. She followed where Izuku had left, finding the door with the nameplate. Iida reached for the doorknob, only to see his hand go right through it. Oh, yeah, they couldn't touch anything. Ochako nervously pushed her hand forward and saw it go through as well. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes before pushing herself through the door, stepping into his room. Iida did the same and almost tripped forward. Izuku's room was almost identical to the one at the dorms, complete with hero figures and posters. There were a few video game consoles he most likely hadn't taken with him to the dorms. He was at his desk with two textbooks open, most likely doing homework, or trying to. He pushed his chair back and hissed, wincing in pain. He bent down and pulled up the pant to reveal red scrapes on his ankle. He had managed to hide that injury from his mother. Iida felt a wave of anger at the thought of someone hurting his friend this badly. That someone just happened to also be one of his classmates. Bakugo was rude to everyone, but they all knew his main target was Izuku. So why hadn't any of them interfered? Why hadn't Iida interfered? Guilt ate away at him. Izuku was a loyal friend, and Iida had let him down. Everyone noticed Izuku's skittish and jumpy nature, but they all had assumed it was one of his characteristics. Now, it was clear these sudden movements were instinctive reactions. He flinched, because he was probably anticipating a hit and was getting ready to run. Izuku needed them. Deku, Ochako said tearfully, approaching to see his ankle closer. Does it hurt? You should show you mom, she's really worried, Deku. But, of course, her words did not reach him. The boy covered his ankle, sighed and went back to his homework. Deku. Ochako chalked. It was frustrating, knowing this beautiful family was struggle internally and she couldn't do anything about it. That was her friend, and even if he didn't know her at the time, she still loved this boy. Izuku looked at his phone and they saw him set an alarm. He folded his arms over the desk and rested his head over them, sighing sadly. Was he planning to sleep here? Midoriya, you can't possibly sleep like this. Iida scolded. He gestured to the bed wildly. Your bed is right over there. Sleeping on your desk will only harm your neck and back. Please, use your bed. Izuku's eyes slowly closed, and Ochako wondered why he seemed so tired, both physically and mentally. Deku. It was when he fell asleep did they realize how weak he looked. He was skinny and he didn't have the well-built muscles he had back at UA. They also remembered how he walked home with his shoulders slumped and head down. He wasn't taking care of himself. Ochako leaned in closer to see his face, and she noted the dark rings beneath his eyes. He was deteriorating. This wasn't the happy Izuku they knew. This one was always tired and weak and quiet. Iida had a horrifying realization. Was his friend suffering through depression? It was a disheartening sight. His friend didn't have the willpower to move to the bed. He would occasionally open his eyes then close them again, so he wasn't sleeping, just resting. Do you think he's sick? Ochako asked nervously. Maybe he's hurting. What if he's hurt somewhere else? Oh, Deku, you need to talk to your mom, please. And let him know he. Please, she pleaded. Something within her wanted to cuddle him and let him know he had people who truly loved him with all of their hearts. She saw a tear slide down his face. It was enough to break her heart. Ochako reached out to touch his shoulder, and gasped when she made contact. Izuku's shoulder cracked like glass beneath her hand. Pieces of him started falling apart, his body breaking into shards and landing on the ground with the sound of breaking cutlery. Ochako backed away in horror and Iida stared in shock. The whole room suddenly shattered like a mirror, spider web cracks stretching everywhere. What's happening? Iida shouted in panic. The walls fell apart, showing nothing but a black background. The floor cracked and turned black as well. Everything was falling apart around them. There was a loud, pained scream, and everything shuddered into shards. The walls, floor, bed, posters of All Might, and Izuku on the desk, all shattered and blew away. Ochako and Iida were left standing in a black room, dark and empty. Open nothingness. Ochako whimpered. This had to be a nightmare. The feeling of dread and isolation and fear was everywhere. It was as if a giant, evil hand was pushing her down. It was like the inside of a dark tunnel, black and echoey and endless. Is this Midoriya's memory as well? Iida asked. His voice bounced off walls he could not see. Ochako looked down at her hand, the hand she'd placed on Izuku's shoulder. I couldn't hold him before. How? What had she done? She then remembered the scream they heard before everything went dark. That sounded like Deku. That was Deku, she said, terror griping at her heart. It had been a scream of agony, of unbearable pain. Where was he? They needed to find him. He was in pain. Their hearts almost stopped when they heard the scream again. Deku, Midoriya. They began running through the darkness, unaware of where they were actually going. They just followed the sound blindly. Their shoes clapped and echoed behind them and their breaths came in short pants. Their eyes caught something in the distance. As they got closer, the ground gave off some light, just enough for them to see a giant spider's web from afar. Lines stretched from the black sky and all around, ending at a small body curled up on the ground. Their running slowed, and they walked toward the unusual image uncertainly. The lines weren't lines, but silver chains. They stretched from different directions, and ended at the middle, connected to something on the ground. That something shifted and the chains rattled. That thing was alive, and it was Deku. Ochako screamed, her voice cracking as tears rolled down her face. He was on his knees and face down, his hands chained behind his back. The chains covered his arms and stomach and shoulders, and there were two thick chains wrapped around his neck as well. He was in simple clothes, the short-sleeved attire he usually wore around the dorms. The chains from the sky were attached to him, the sight was unreal. This couldn't be a memory, they hoped it wasn't a memory. Deku. She ran for him, worry eating at her heart. This was too much to handle. He was chained up like a wild animal, and he looked so defenseless, on his knees with his forehead pressed to the ground and hands behind his back. This was too cruel. Iida sucked in a breath when he noted how Izuku flinched as soon as Ochako called for him. Could he hear them? It couldn't be possible. Midoriya, Iida asked and knelt down on one knee. Ochako fell to her knees and as soon as she placed her hand on Izuku's shoulder, she gasped and more tears fell. She heard him grunt and he slowly turned his head to the side, staring blurry-eyed at her knees. You. Uraraka. His voice sounded scratchy and tired, but it was him. Hearing him speak caused the two to grab him in desperation. Midoriya. Oh gosh, Deku, she cried and collected him into a hug. Stronger hands circled them both as Iida hugged them both. Uraraka. Iida. Izuku asked tiredly. It sounded like he had been deprived of water. His throat sounded so dry and lifeless. He recognized them. He wasn't a memory. He was real. This was where their Izuku had gone. This was where he had been this whole time. Ochako hugged him tighter, rubbing her teary face into his green hair. She had missed him, and now, having him in her arms, she realized just how much she needed this boy in her life. Deku. She whined into his hair. What? How did you guys? Izuku tried to speak, only to stop to take a breath. He was panting for some reason. Hold on, Midoriya. We'll get you out of here. Iida told him. He then pulled away to check the chains that prevented his friend from getting up. He grabbed at the chains that tied Izuku's hands together behind his back, checking to see how to unlock it. Ochako got closer and let Izuku's head rest on his lap, keeping one hand on his cheek and brushing through his hair with the other, trying to comfort him. It's okay, Deku. She was still crying. Why was he chained up like this? It's okay. He didn't deserve this. Deku. Just how long had he been like this? We'll get you home. Her tears fell on him. I promise we'll get you home. There was a slight buzzing sound. She felt Izuku flinch in her hold. He suddenly jolted his head up. Up, guys, get away, he shouted urgently, throwing his head back and thrashing to get his friends to let go of him. Wah, Midoriya, wait. What's wrong? Let go. Hurry. They'd never heard him scream like this before. The chains glowed, and a line of bright blue electricity ran down the chains. Izuku tilted his lower half to the side and kicked Iida in the stomach, sending Iida toppling back before the electricity from the chains reached his body. They watched in horror as Izuku's body went rigid. His head slammed down against the ground and an animalistic shriek ripped through his throat. He was getting electrocuted, and they watched uselessly as he got tortured. He had anticipated the shock, which meant it had happened before. Iida and Ochako screamed for him and instinctively threw themselves at him. The second their bodies made contact, searing pain stabbed through them and traveled throughout their entire bodies. The agony didn't last long, and as soon as the electricity stopped, the three slumped to the ground, panting heavily. Duh. Deku. Ochako reached for one of the chain attached to his neck and pulled at it weakly, trying to free her friend somehow. Run. Izuku hissed. Please, go. Another hand grabbed at the chain. We won't leave you, Midoriya. Iida said and pulled at the chain, too. Guys, please. He sounded so tired, so worn out. It broke their hearts, knowing he was enduring this for days. There was a loud thump from behind them, followed by a snake-like hiss. Iida and Ochako slowly turned around. Just a few feet behind them, black oil oozed out of the ground. The slimy puddle grew and slowly started to take shape like clay, molding into an elephant-sized scorpion. The enormous monster hissed at them, raising its stinger aggressively. Its many eyes locked onto them. It ran at them. Before Ochako could react, she watched as it swiped away Iida with its claw, sending him sliding across the ground. Iida! She screamed, but refused to leave Izuku's side. Iida's body slowly faded, disappearing out of sight. The monster towered over her, its claw ready. In a desperate attempt to protect her friend, she threw herself over Izuku's body. The hit didn't hurt much, but when she looked down at her hands, she realized she was fading. She could see Izuku's hair through her hand. Deku. She hugged him, feeling useless and defeated. We'll get you out. I promise, Deku. Her vision slowly darkened and Izuku vanished from her eyes. She cracked her eyes open, finding the familiar white walls of the hospital. Her friends gather around, and Iida on the other side of the bed, wide-eyed and sweating as if he'd just woken up from a nightmare. They were both still holding Izuku's hand. Izuku was still asleep, unmoving and unresponsive. Chapter 4. The silence in the room was unsettling. Grief washed over the group when Iida had informed them, in a shaky voice, how they found Midoriya, the real Midoriya, chained up and hurting. The trip inside Izuku's mind had strained Iida and Ochako mentally. Iida kept his head bowed, his hand over his face, trying to calm himself. Sui rubbed Ochako's back as the gravity girl remained traumatized in her seat, her fingers trembling like tuning forks while her other hand refused to let go of Izuku's. He couldn't wake up, because he wasn't allowed to. He was restrained, trapped in the darkness of his own mind. He had been like this for days while everyone had thought he was simply asleep. He'd been suffering this whole time. Their sweet boy, the one who always greeted them with that wide, innocent smile and encouraging words, the one who always had their backs when they needed help, was in a never-ending loop of torture, and had been for some time. Ochako swallowed down a sob. The memory of Izuku's screams of agony still fresh in her mind. She pressed his hand to her wet face, rubbing it against her cheek and over her eyes and forehead. I won't leave you. I can't leave you. She hiccuped miserably, and no one blamed her for breaking down in front of them. They remember what Izawa had told them about the other victims. One had woken up, but committed suicide later on, the other passed away in her sleep. What would happen to their friend? Would he end up like the first, or the second? There was a possibility they would never see him awake ever again, and the thought of losing him for good caused their hearts to sink into an endless pit of despair. And his mother. What would they tell her? That her baby boy had been in excruciating pain and no one had noticed. Let me try, Kirishima said. His hands were tight fists, shaking with barely contained rage. Aizawa eyed him uncertainly. Kirishima hardened his arms, making them look menacing. He's chained up, if I can just break him out. Let me come along as well, Todoroki said calmly. If we encounter the same monster they had, then we'll need to hold it back. Mina raised her hand. Let me go, too, she demanded. Other students, such as Ojiro and Momo also raised their hands. Yeah. Denki held up a fist to the sky. Jiro raised both her hand and, without realizing, one of her earphones raised up as well. Those things moved by instinct sometimes. Let's all save him. Toru cheered, raising an invisible hand. Suyu and Tokiyami raised their hands, too. Midoriya has been a noble friend. We cannot abandon him, Tokiyami said. Shoji raised 3 of his arms. No way, I'm letting you have all the action. Zero punched the sky. Aizawa sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Just don't screw this up, save Midoriya. See it as your first heroic mission. And make sure you come back. We're already 1 student down. Yes, sir. They all shouted in unison. They would get him back for sure. Guys. Denki asked. I don't know if you noticed, but Midoriya only has 2 hands, he pointed out as if the others were too stupid to notice that detail. Jiro slapped the back of his head. Idiot, you just realized that. Denki back away, offended. But, how are we supposed to? How are we sure they managed to enter because they held hands? Momo asked, thinking it over. Had it been due to physical contact, or close proximity? Or is there something else we are missing? One way to find out, Kirishima said, accepting a can of sleeping gas provided by the doctor. Izuku was slowly dying inside, they couldn't wait. They gathered their chairs closer to the bed. Iida and Ochako still held Izuku's hands. While Ochako held his palm, Kirishima managed to place his hand over Izuku's hand. Todoroki did the same on Iida's side, sandwiching Izuku's hands. The rest of the students either placed hands on his arms and knees, hoping this would still work. They were surprised when Bakugo dragged over his chair. The group felt the air around them thicken. Iida looked at the red-eyed boy disapprovingly while Ochako's wet eyes glared daggers. What? Bakugo snapped. Got something to say. He carelessly plopped his feet over the bed, right atop of Izuku's legs, because he was not touching the nerd with his hands. I thought you disliked Midoriya, Iida pointed out. Bakugo was known for targeting Deku, but seeing the effects of Bakugo's bullying on Izuku's old self had triggered a protective instinct within Iida. Bakugo was Midoriya's bully, and he never knew how bad it must have been for his friend, until he got to see how sad the younger Izuku had been with his own eyes. I hate his fucking guts, what's new? Bakugo growled out. Come on, now, Kirishima sensed the uneasiness in the atmosphere and tried to prevent an argument. Not now, guys, we need to get Midoriya. We can't waste time. Come on, who wants to go first? He gestured to the gas can. His question was ignored. I don't think Bakugo should come with us, Ochako blurted out angrily, and the whole group suddenly froze. They hadn't noticed it before, but the hostility of both Ochako and Iida towards Bakugo was too evident to ignore now. Huh? Bakugo raised a brow. And who gives a shit what you think, gravity bitch? I agree with her, Iida butted in, Denki mouthed. Oh shit, and the students went rigid, expecting a fight to happen. You two wanna start something? Bakugo shouted, holding up his hand and letting tiny explosions go off. Okay, calm down. Kirishima, still holding on to Izuku's hand, stood up and got mentally ready to shove himself at Bakugo if the blonde decided to release a bigger explosion. Bakugo has attacked Midoriya many times before, Iida stated. Midoriya is in critical condition. I believe it is not safe to bring Bakugo along. Ochako nodded, agreeing with her friend. And who the fuck would listen to you, Four Eyes? Bakugo yelled and slammed his hand against the bed. If you wanna fight, then you should have just said so. Hold on, everyone, just hold on. Kirishima's attempts to settle them down didn't do much. Calming Bakugo was almost impossible, so he turned to what was causing Bakugo's anger. Okay, guys, he tried to sound friendly to Ochako and Iida. I know Midoriya and Bakugo don't get along. Who gets along with Bakugo? Ack. Denki yelped when Jiro elbowed him in the ribs. Tensions were already high. They didn't need to be dragged in as well, but we need everyone's help right now, Kirishima told them. And we've got plenty. Iida gestured to everyone. This wasn't normal, the group of students realized. Iida was known for being strict, but he wasn't one to start fights. Ochako usually kept her distance from Bakugo, or, at the very least, interacted minimally around him. But right now, she looked ready to attack him. Then, a thought occurred to them. Bakugo and Izuku had known each other before Ua, everyone knew that much. Ochako and Iida had seen parts of Izuku's memories, and Ochako had mentioned she'd seen Bakugo in his memory. And now, right after going into Izuku's head, both Ochako and Iida were giving the blonde disapproving glares. Damn, Denki said without meaning to. Jiro didn't scold him this time, because they all had the same question floating in their heads. What had they seen? This is ridiculous, Momo finally said. We are losing time. Think of Midoriya. That got Ochako and Iida to focus on their sleeping friend again. The more they argued, the more time was wasted as Izuku waited for them. Ochako pointed to the gas can and Kirishima handed it to her. 2 presses, the doctor reminded, watching the scene. Ochako nodded. She glared at Bakugo one last time as if to say, "We'll finish this later," and placed the plastic mask over her mouth and nose and gave the handle 2 firm presses, breathing in deeply. She passed the can to Suyu before drowsiness fogged her head. She made sure to hold on to Izuku's hand as she laid her head on the edge of his pillow, close to his head. She'd make sure he was safe. The can passed from one person to the other. After a few minutes, only Iida, Kirishima and Bakugo were left. Bakugo glared at the class president before inhaling the gas and passing it to Kirishima. He kept his feet atop Izuku's and leaned back in his chair to fall asleep, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "Here, man," Kirishima held the can out to Iida. "Hey, don't worry." He patted Iida's shoulder in reassurance and gestured to the sleeping blonde. "I don't know what you saw, but I'll keep an eye on Blasty, K." Iida looked surprised and Kirishima chuckled at the bewildered look on his face. "Don't worry about him, just focus on getting Midoriya back." Iida finally smiled weakly and took the can. "Thank you." "What the fuck?" Bakugo screamed in irritation. He rubbed at his aching eyes. "Fellas, I think I'm blind." Mina panicked. "Am I blind? I can't see." "I can't, either." Denki yelled back. "My eyes hurt. I can't see a thing," Jiro complained. "It's okay, everyone," Ochako yelled out. This was her 3rd time experiencing this phenomenon of temporary blindness. "Please, do not panic," Iida shouted. "This is completely normal. I'm freaking out." "Oh." Denki squinted down at his hand. He could make out the shape of his palm. Everyone else started to settle down as their vision slowly came back. They were in a white world of light. "This is it. Did we make it?" Denki asked, his voice echoing through the emptiness. "This is so creepy." Jiro shivered and hugged herself. "Is everyone here?" Iida started counting the students around him. "Guys." Kirishima ran over to them. He stopped to catch his breath. "There you are. I thought I was blind back there. Glad to see you made it." Ciro congratulated and gave him a high five. "So, this is it?" Ciro asked, gesturing to the emptiness. Thought Midoriya would have more in his head. Clouds of colors slowly leaked into the whiteness, smudging everything into shades of grays and blues. The group of students huddled closer to each other for security as they watched the world change around them. White cotton clouds drifted in blue skies above their heads. Everyone was too shocked to move, until Bakugo stepped away from the group. This is. His red pupils shrunk, realization dawned upon him. What the fuck? Why here? They were on a roof of a building. They all approached the edge and saw the world beneath. Kids in uniforms were down there, walking and laughing and joking around. They were on the roof of a school. You've been here before, Bakugo, Todoroki said. It wasn't a question, because he knew, by Bakugo's reaction, that he knew the place. Yeah, Bakugo admitted reluctantly. His hands were ready to crack a few bombs. My shitty school before UA. Wow, that was all Denki could say. Bakugo and Midoriya had gone to the same school, and if this was indeed Midoriya's memory, then it was Bakugo's as well. From behind them, there was a sound of paper being flipped. They all turned and saw a boy in his school uniform sitting on the ground, his back against a wall, and a notebook was open on his knees that were drawn to his chest. He scribbled something down. They all recognized him. That freckled face was hard to forget. Midoriya, Kirishima asked, not believing his eyes. Sure, he had been told by Iida and Ochako that they had seen him here, but seeing the proof with his own eyes was still shocking. Holy crap, it's really him. He looked skinnier, but this was him, no doubt about it. Midoriya. Hey, Midoriya. Mina tried to call for him, but he didn't react in any way. He can't hear us, Ochako reminded her sadly. She knelt next to him and tried to touch his shoulder, only to see her hand go through him. Wah! Denki gasped. That's so weird. So this is Midoriya in the past. Momo turned to Iida. How did you find the real Midoriya, though? That, I'm not so sure, Iida admitted. He looked over at Ochako for assistance. She looked down at her hand. I'm not sure how it happened, but I grabbed his shoulder. She repeated the action and saw her hand goes through his shoulder again. I couldn't before, but it worked that time. That last time, she touched his shoulder and he cracked. Literally, right under her hand. I guess we just have to keep trying. Jiro recommended. Kirishima squatted next to Izuku as the other boy continued writing something down. What, Cha doing there? Kirishima peeked over. There was a sketch of 13, along with the notes on the sides. Kirishima chuckled. Been doing that since before, huh? They all knew how Izuku liked to analyze quirks and heroes. It was a hobby of his they'd gotten used to. While it seemed nerdy as heck, it was still a hobby he enjoyed, and they respected that. Everyone had a hobby, so why wouldn't he? They felt a slight rush of familiarity. Watching this Izuku doing what their Izuku used to do, it felt like looking through childhood photos of one's family. For a moment, it felt as if this Izuku was everyone's little brother. He looked at peace, doing what he loved. Ochako saw the light in his eyes. He looked happy, content, like their Izuku. Such a simple thing as doodling in a notebook brought him so much joy. She then looked around. He was all alone up here, on the roof, quietly sketching. Izuku has always been a lonely boy. This was his sanctuary, his little hiding place, where he could practice his hobby without being called a nerd and being looked down upon. Kirishima tried to tap his shoulder, but wasn't surprised when his hand didn't reach anything. He sighed sadly. Come on, buddy. Don't you want to go back? It was useless, but they had to keep trying. Ochako had managed to get through before, so it wasn't impossible. Your mother's been waiting for you, Midoriya, Todoroki tried. Everyone's waiting, Ochako said in desperation. Come on, let's go home. She pleaded and tried to grab him again, but no matter what she did, it was useless. Izuku continued writing. They heard Bakugo click his tongue impatiently. The school bell rang. Izuku jumped at the sound, and then sighed before closing the notebook and unzipping his yellow backpack, stuffing the notebook in. Ochako noticed how the happy glint in his eyes disappeared. He strapped on his backpack and headed for the stairs. They followed their comrade, his shoes clapping with each step down. It was an awkward stroll to his classroom. Other students around Izuku walked by normally in groups of friends, yet, there was something off about the atmosphere around him. He looked isolated, as if he was somewhere he did not belong. He was quiet, too quiet, even for the Izuku they knew. He stopped right in front of the open door of a classroom. They all noted how his shoulders tensed defensively. They then heard a familiar voice. There was Bakugo in a black school uniform with his feet lazily propped over his desk. There were two other students standing over him, chatting away. One of them resembled the student Ochako had described. Izuku flinched when memory Bakugo glared at him. It looked like Izuku was ready to run if the other boy got up. All right, settle down, a man said, scaring Izuku. The teacher walked in. He had no sort of enthusiasm whatsoever. Settle down. Ochako tried to tap Izuku's shoulder one last time, and failed again, before he made his way to his desk with his eyes looking at nothing but the ground. Dude, Denki said to the real Bakugo. Not a fan of teachers, but this guy's depressing, man. He already had difficulties focusing in class, he was just glad he didn't have this boring teacher. The guy looked like he had given up on life altogether and was just waiting to die and get it over with. Denki almost fell asleep until the man slammed a stack of papers against the desk before scattering them carelessly. You all wish to enter the heroic section, no? The classroom erupted in cheers and whistles and a few students showed off their quirks. The UA students felt a rush of energy, suddenly wanting to be part of this as well, until they saw how enthusiastic Izuku was about it. He had raised his hand, but that was it. He was a fanboy when it came to anything hero related, so why hadn't he been excited for this? Oi, oi, don't group me with these losers. Past Bakugo laughed before he made a scene, standing on his desk and declaring his superiority over everyone. Man, you were worse back then. Denki commented. He cowered behind Jiro when Bakugo tried to swing a fist at him. Shut it, Electro doled. Both UA students and Dream students quieted when the teacher spoke again. Oh, didn't Midoriya wish to enter UA as well? Everyone turned to the green-haired boy. He was hiding his face and had flinched the second he heard his name. UA students looked around in confusion when everyone started laughing hysterically. What's so funny? Denki asked in confusion. Had he missed a joke? The look on Izuku's face when he finally looked up. He looked so under attack. This didn't feel right. You, Midoriya. It's impossible for you. Is he serious? You've got to be kidding me. Anger boiled within the UA students. Hey, leave him alone. Kirishima snapped. He could take it that was his friend, and the whole class was ganging up against him. Laughing at another classmate. That's not very manly. Ochako's anger and sadness molded in the form of tears. Stop it. What's wrong with Deku wanting to be a hero? I know he'll make a great hero. You can't just become a hero by just studying. In the heroes section, you can't do anything. I don't think they'll let him in anyways. He's quirkless. That last comment stopped them in their tracks. Quirkless. Midoriya. There was no way he was quirkless. The boy had broken buildings and cement walls. They'd seen his powerful quirk with their own eyes. He's not quirkless. What are they talking about? Todoroki asked, looking around as if the answer might present itself. He didn't like how the kid had said quirkless, as if the word was an insult. Quirk or no quirk, people were still people. Quirks did not define a person. Quirkless shouldn't be an insult. I know there's never been a quirkless hero before, but maybe I can be the first. Izuku said timidly. Iida was about to defend him when his words sunk in. There's never been a quirkless hero before. I can be the first. Did he just admit to being quirkless? Had he heard him wrong? They group noticed how uneasy Bakugo seemed. He knew something. He knew something they didn't. Dude, what's going on? Denki asked hesitantly. How the fuck should I know? Bakugo growled. It's your school. Denki suggested. He knew he wasn't supposed to tempt an angry lion, especially if this lion could blow shit up. Fuck off, it's none of your business. So you do know, Todoroki stated. Iida and Ochako turned to each other. They remembered that one day when, while walking home together, Deku had told them his quirk had manifested way too late due to a genetic mutation. They had never thought he'd meant this late. Was it even possible to gain a quirk at this age? Useless shit. The dream Bakugo suddenly smashed a fist against Izuku's desk, emitting an explosion that sent the other boy out of his chair. Ochako acted on impulse and tried to help Deku up, but her hand grabbed at nothing. The green-haired boy cowardly backed away until his back hit the wall. The dream Bakugo towered over him menacingly. While they had gotten used to seeing Bakugo act this way, Izuku wasn't running, he wasn't defending himself in any way. It looked like he was ready to shut down on himself. Teacher! Iida yelled worriedly. Please, stop this. Bakugo's behavior is unacceptable. The teacher remained uninterested. He simply picked at his ear with his pinky finger. Their teachers at UA wouldn't have let this go on. They weren't the targets of this class, but they couldn't help but feel distraught by the situation. You don't even have a weak quirk, you don't have anything. Listen up, I'm the only one getting into UA, got it? They don't take in useless shits, the dream Bakugo yelled and Izuku shrunk back even further. Stop it, Ochako whimpered. This was too cruel to watch. Someone do something. The teacher. One of the students. Anyone. Stop it, can't you see he's scared? She yelled, not caring that she looked like a crying child throwing a tantrum. Kachan. I'm not competing against you, it's just. Izuku struggled with his words. It's just that, being a hero, it's been my goal since I was a kid. And you'll make a great hero, Deku. Ochako cheered him on, wiping away tears. If they weren't going to stand up for him, then she would. Yeah, man, Kirishima tagged in, you made it to UA. Just ignore grumpy old Blasty there. Hey, I'm right here, hair for brain, the real Bakugo yelled. However, Izuku's class only laughed at his childish dream, with a few calling him useless and good for nothing. Here, it seemed like Bakugo was top dog, while Izuku was at the bottom. Bakugo had a powerful quirk and an unshakable personality. He was loud, and if he wanted something, he'd get it one way or another. He earned himself a reputation to not be messed with, and that alone seemed to be enough to let him get away with bullying the underdog. They would rather side with the monster than be the monster's bait. Dude. Denki looked at Bakugo. No wonder he's scared shitless of you. And you should be, too. Bakugo yelled, warning him that he was getting a little too close to getting scorched. The class resumed with the UA students trying desperately to make contact with Izuku. Nothing was working. They were only ghosts in this world. During class, he would make a few more notes in his notebook. The bell rang and the students of the memory got up to leave. Izuku, however, pulled out his phone to check something. I don't understand, Iida said. What are we to do? How did we get to Midoriya before? Did we have to wait for something? You said it happened when he was in his bedroom, right? Momo asked Ochako. She nodded. Yeah, I grabbed him when he was trying to sleep at his desk. Do you think it has something to do with the location, then? Iida asked. I'm not sure. All I do know is that we need to try and copy the scenario as close as we can, Momo informed them. Uraraka did something right, we just don't know what. Incoming, incoming. Siro warned, seeing the dream Bakugo approaching with his unnamed buddies. Holy crap, are you seriously going after him again? I know you're a dick, but come on. Shut the fuck up. The dream Bakugo snatched the notebook from Izuku's hand. Dread washed over the group. They immediately remembered how Izuku's notebook looked back during the sports festival. Blackened and wrinkled up, they knew it was going to happen. They just weren't ready to see it happen. No way. Please don't tell me he's gonna. Dream Bakugo slapped the notebook between his hands. Black smoke puffed out as tiny explosions burned the outer pages. Izuku screamed, and some of the UA students had the same reaction. Wah! What the hell? Denki yelled. Why'd you do that? Ochako clutched her head, her worries piling up quickly. She remembered how Bakugo had shoved him against the wall, and how he left bruises on the poor boy, and how he had turned the whole class against Izuku, and now, how he went out of his way to destroy his possessions. Bakugo was the definition of a bully, of an abuser. The real Bakugo, the one who had come along with them, was growling, his teeth grinding painfully together as his classmates watched his younger self behave like a lunatic. They gasped in horror when the dream Bakugo threw the notebook out the window. What did you think you were doing, Bakugo? Iida scolded furiously. That wasn't very heroic, man. Kirishima admitted. Kinda the opposite of that, really, he wanted to add, but thought it was better to not add fuel to fire and kept his mouth shut. Look, I know you and Midoriya don't get along, he chose his words carefully, but don't you think you went a little too far? A little. Mina piped up. Things only escalated when the younger Bakugo placed his palm over Izuku's shoulder. Strings of smoke escaped from between his fingers. He was burning him, and Izuku was just taking it. This wasn't the same boy who had flipped Bakugo over during the battle trial. This Izuku didn't defend himself, and that fact made their worries explode in full force. Wah, chill, man. Calm down. Kirishima threw all logic aside and tried to physically get in between the two past students. However, being a ghost, he couldn't do much. That's enough, he's going too far. Momo yelled out angrily. The past Bakugo had no leash or boundaries. No one told what he could and couldn't do. There were no punishments for his wrongdoings. Stop it, you're hurting him. Ochako felt her heart tear when she saw the look of terror in Izuku's face. She and everyone else breathed a sigh of relief when the past Bakugo released him. You know, there's a way you can become a hero, past Bakugo said, standing by the doorway. You can jump off the roof and hope you get reborn with a quirk in your next life. The group stared in utter silence as the words slowly sunk in. A few held their breaths when they realized what had just happened, and a few gaped in disbelief. Ochako covered her mouth in horror and Iida and a few others stood as still as stones. It was so quiet, a pin hitting the floor would sound too loud. A few students, mainly Iida, Todoroki, Kirishima and Ochako dared to turn and stare at Bakugo, their Bakugo, as the younger version left. His hair shadowed his face, his fists clenching tightly. Bakugo, Kirishima called nervously. Please tell me that didn't actually happen. Where stories live. Discover now.